Hello and welcome. Today, we're going to build a powerful mathematical toolkit together. And our mission? Well, it's to take quadratic equations, which can seem a little intimidating, and turn them into something you can tackle with total confidence. So let's dive right in. It all starts with a pretty simple choice. Let's say you're buying a new computer monitor. You've got limited desk space, but you want the biggest screen you can get. This kind of decision, and so many others, in science, finance, you name it, they involve relationships that aren't just simple, straight lines. So how do we figure out the best answer when things get a little more curved? Well, the key is mastering the quadratic equation. So what exactly is this thing we're dealing with? A quadratic equation is really just any equation that you can write in the standard form. The absolute key ingredient is that x squared term. That little 2 up there, that's the star of the show. It's what gives these equations their unique powers and that classic U-shape, the parabola, when you graph them. Now, a, b, and c are just numbers, but here's the catch. A can't be 0. If it was, that x squared term would just vanish, and we wouldn't have a quadratic anymore. All right, here's our game plan for building out this toolkit. We'll start with the fundamentals, of course. Then we're going to add 4 awesome tools to our collection. Factoring, the square root method, completing the square, and finally, the master key that unlocks every single one of them, the quadratic formula. First step in our kit is factoring. I want you to think of this as your trusty, reliable wrench. For a whole lot of equations, it is absolutely the quickest and most satisfying way to get the job done. So what makes factoring work? It all comes down to this one simple but honestly profound idea, the zero product property. All it says is that if you multiply 2 things together and the answer is 0, then one of those things has to be 0. There's no other way. That right there, that's the whole secret behind solving by factoring. So how do we put it to use? Well, when our equation is in that nice, simple x squared plus bx plus c equals 0 format, the whole thing becomes a kind of fun number puzzle. You're just looking for 2 numbers that multiply to give you c and add up to give you b. Once you find them, you can break the equation into 2 simple parts. And because of that zero product property, you can solve each little part on its own. And this is just a perfect illustration of the process. For x squared plus x minus 6 equals 0, we're on the hunt for 2 numbers that multiply to -6 and add up to +1. What about +3 and -2? Yep, that works. So that gives us our 2 factors, x plus 3 and x minus 2. We set each one to 0, solve, and there you have it, our 2 solutions, x equals -3 and x equals 2. See? Simple as that. All right, let's keep building. Our next tool is the square root property. Now, this isn't your everyday wrench. Think of it more like a precision screwdriver. It is perfect for one very specific job. The mark of a real pro is knowing which tool to use and when. Factoring is awesome, but what happens if your equation looks something like ax squared plus c equals 0? There's no bx term in the middle to deal with. In that case, there's a much more direct path to the answer. And the method is just beautifully simple. First, you get the x squared part all by itself on one side of the equation. Then you just take the square root of both sides to get x by itself. Now, here is the one thing you absolutely have to remember. There are always 2 square roots, a positive one and a negative one. For instance, the square root of 9 isn't just 3, it's plus or minus 3. Don't forget that. Okay, time to bring out the power tools. Completing the square is a more heavy-duty method. It can handle those tougher equations that might be really difficult or even impossible to factor neatly. The main idea here is really clever. We're going to mathematically force one side of the equation to become what's called a perfect square trinomial. All that means is it's something that can be factored into a nice, neat package like x plus p squared. And why do we do that? Because it sets us up perfectly to use our last tool, the square root property, to solve it. Let's just walk through this example. We have x squared minus 3x minus 5 equals 0. Yeah, trying to factor that looks like a headache, so we complete the square. First, we move that constant, the -5, over to the other side, so it becomes a +5. Next, we take the coefficient of the middle term, -3, and we cut it in half, which gives us -1.5. Now we square that result. -1.5 squared is 2.25. And that is the magic number we add to both sides of the equation. Why? Because now the left side is a perfect square, x minus 1.5 squared. And from there, it's easy. Just take the square root of both sides, and you're on your way to the solution. It's a seriously powerful technique. So we have some fantastic tools in our kit. We've got a wrench for simple jobs, a precision driver for special cases, and a power tool for the really tough stuff. But now it's time for the master key, the one tool that can unlock any quadratic equation you will ever face. Because let's be honest, sometimes the numbers are just plain messy. Factoring feels impossible, and completing the square can get really complicated with all the fractions. In those moments, you don't want to be guessing. You want a method that is guaranteed to work every single time. And here it is, the quadratic formula. This formula actually comes directly from the process of completing the square, just on the general ax squared plus bx plus c form. It might look a little intimidating at first glance, but I promise you, this is the most powerful and reliable tool in our entire kit. And using it is just a 4-step process. It's really just plug and play. First, get your equation into that standard form so you can correctly pick out your a, b, and c values. Then you just plug those numbers into the formula. The most important thing is to be super careful when you substitute, especially with any negative signs. But after that, it's just a matter of doing the arithmetic. But check this out. The formula has a hidden feature. It's not just for solving problems, it's also a diagnostic tool. It can actually tell you about the kind of answers you're going to get before you even finish the calculation. See this part of the formula right under the square root sign, the b squared minus 4ac? That's called the discriminant. And just by calculating this one little value, you can tell if you're going to have one solution, two nice, clean, rational solutions, or even two solutions that involve complex, imaginary numbers. It's like having a crystal ball for your equation. It's amazing. And there you have it, your complete quadratic toolkit. You've got the trusty wrench of factoring for those friendly-looking equations, the precision tool of the square root property for those special cases, the power tool of completing the square, which shows us where the big formula even comes from, and of course, the universal master key, the quadratic formula, for absolutely everything else. And this isn't just some abstract thing we do in math class. I mean, think about one of the most famous theorems in all of history, the Pythagorean theorem. A squared plus b squared equals c squared. That relationship between the sides of a right triangle, that is fundamentally a quadratic relationship. You've probably been using these ideas for years without even realizing it. So, we've built the toolkit. We've equipped you with 4 powerful methods to solve any quadratic equation that comes your way. So the real question is, what are you going to do with it? From figuring out the arc of a thrown football to designing a bridge or understanding a financial model, these tools are ready to go. What problems will you solve?